It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with certified financial planners Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we're helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. Thanks for being here, friends. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm your host. I'm also one of the certified financial planners on the program. And with me in the KFG studio is my business partners and fellow CFPs, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory.
It's housing season, and more people are growing curious about owning rental properties. How do you know if this is a good fit for you? We've got our 4 laws of rental real estate, that and more, on this hour of the Wise Money Show.
It is curious that this is coming up. I don't know if you've thought about it, if you've ever done it and had some experience, maybe some horror stories, maybe it worked out well for you. But with affordability stretched, it is surprising how many people are talking about, well, is now a good time to start renting? And we're going to help you with it right now. If you have a question for the program, you can reach out to us a few different ways. You can call or text us, 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. Online, wisemoneyshow.com is where you can reach out to us. That's where we receive both of the questions we're going to start with today. You can submit questions right there. Learn more about the show, learn more about the firm. And then all over social media, wherever you're at, we are there as well. Just search The Wise Money Show. Yeah, so we're kicking off the show. The question from a fan, Terry, says, our family has outgrown our home, and we're looking for a new house. I mean, so is, about 100 million people right now, actually. So families outgrowing our home. We're looking for a new one. But here's the twist. Instead of selling our existing home, we'd like to rent it out instead. What are some of the risks to look out for? Kevin, you just had a friend reach out with this sort of same question, right?
Yeah, the question is, okay, I want to generate passive income. And
passive. I mean, you have to laugh at that, right? Because you've experienced.
We're talking about rentals.
You've been a landlord, so passive.
Let me tell you about this passive income. Because to me, passive income means I'm laying by the pool, and I'm only signing the back of checks. Yeah, right. I'm not signing the front of the checks. I'm just signing the back of them. I just collecting the money. And so it is a little bit of a misnomer to say, hey, this is passive income. I think a rental real estate is one of the greatest investments in the history of investments.
But why? But let's stop there, because emotionally it can seem really good on the surface, and yet we're going to go through our 4 laws here. It's not for everyone.
Right.
But what makes it so appealing? I mean,
well, what makes it the greatest investment is that if you assign no value to your time, you can have a pretty decent rate of return on that.
Well, yeah, because you own an asset that should appreciate. And we're not talking about, just being in huge metropolitan areas. Obviously in rural areas and small towns, it can be different. But let's just average it all out and say the asset should grow with inflation. Okay. And yes, it has some carrying costs, property taxes and maintenance and so on, but should grow with inflation. But then you're getting income off of that asset as well that also should grow with inflation.
Yeah, and it's kind of sold by influencers online as, listen, you can get into this investment with no money. Yeah. Someone else is going to pay the mortgage. And at some point down the road, you own a house debt-free that someone else paid for. And if you think about that,
why wouldn't you sign up for that, right?
Well, if 1 is good, 10 is better. What are you talking about here? Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So then even the question is phrased, what are the risks to look out for? Is now the time to weave in our 4 laws, or Josh, you want to weigh in here?
I think we got to go with the 4 laws because people want to know up front, what are we talking about?
Why don't you unpack those then?
All right. So this is basically derived not from our own thinking, our own just theory, hypothesis. It's looking at many individuals who have started comprehensive financial planning, looking at all 6 areas of their financial life, that already had rental portfolios, and sort of comparing, well, those that are struggling, it's not really working. Okay, what are some things that they might have in common? But really, those that have really made this work and have gotten over those challenging times or the humps, and it's really working for them, is there something that they have in common? And yeah, there's like a zipper, the things that are similar with the not working group are the exact opposite in the ones where it is working. And yeah, there's exceptions to these, I'm sure, but in general, 4 laws. If you've ever thought, yeah, that would be great to own a home that someone else pays the mortgage on, and then someday in the future, you're just out there either collecting checks on the beach or you own a house that someone else paid for, you first before you get into rental real estate, you need to have some know-how. If you have to, every time the toilet won't flush, or the door, the hinges aren't working quite right, or anytime there's an issue, if you've got to pay someone else or you don't know how to fix it yourself, that is going to drain both your energy, but also drain your pocketbook. You've got to have some know-how.
All the clients, everyone I've ever known who have been the most successful with rental properties or rental portfolios, they have had the know-how. Like they're beyond handyman type skills.
Yeah.
And they have the ability to buy maybe a distressed property, get it whipped into shape, get it rented out. But then every time the property turns, there's always something that has to be fixed or updated, refreshed, that sort of thing. And like you said, if you're always turning to a professional, paying someone else who has a profit motive and has some extra cost built in, then it just does dilute some of the goodness of the property's profitability.
And a lot of times people with this one, the rebuttal will be, well, I'm going to hire a property manager. Good property managers are very hard to find. Very, very hard to find. And odds are, I'm just preparing you, even if you sort of dismiss these 4 laws, or maybe they work for you, if you think, no, I am going to use a property manager, expect to go through 2, 3, maybe even 4 before you find a good one.
Right. So, I mean, the big idea is you think, well, what's so hard about just owning a house? And the concept is very simple, but the execution of it is pretty complicated. I mean, you are running a business.
Yeah.
Period. And so it's not just owning a house. You need to understand leases. You need to understand how to screen potential tenants, fair housing basics, local ordinances, how to analyze rental investment.
Got AI for all that.
Cash on cash. Right. So you have, sure, AI can tell you what to do. But then that's the other thing, and I know we're going to get to this, but it's, do I have time to do it?
Yeah.
And when I think about this,
so that's the second one. You need time, and we hear that a lot. A lot of times, people come to us and say, "Yeah, I'd like to. I'm thinking about doing rentals," and it's because they're busy and they're looking at that from an investment standpoint and the potential return, and you look and say, I don't know. Like, I don't know where you'd find time for this. Do you like going on vacation with your family?
Right.
Because you can kiss all of those goodbye. Well, so you have to have some time. So
and flexibility too,
right.
Because it's not like this only happens on the weekends when you're not at work, or only in the evenings when you don't already have a baseball game to get to or practice or something like that.
We've had some really challenging storms run through this spring, earlier in March, and I was talking to someone the day after one of them, and he's got rentals that he manages. And I'm like, well, were you just holding your breath last night while we were all watching, this small pop-up storm that had a confirmed tornado in it? And we're like, I don't know, these meteorologists had no idea the path of this thing. They were using a lot of words. They had no clue where that thing was going. And I was like, were you holding your breath? He was like, I was just so thankful, blah, blah, blah. Didn't actually. So yeah, I mean, that it requires time to attend to these, but also worry. So it's going to steal some of your attention.
Right. So if the first one is know-how and the second one is time, woven between those two is my big question to folks. What do you want to think about?
Yeah.
And if you want to be thinking about, okay, I'm leaving on vacation, because I almost don't remember a vacation where my wife didn't get a call from like the problems all wait till you go on vacation. And that's when they rear their ugly heads. And now we're on vacation, trying to think about vacation, family time together, being together, enjoying each other. And no, we're thinking about the problem.
Yeah. And so, and this is going to sound, when we talk about these laws, it's going to sound like we're trying to talk you out of it. Absolutely not. Please don't hear that. In fact, what Kevin was just sharing, if you didn't read between the lines, I mean, Kevin owns a lot of rental properties, and Josh and I are part owners in some as well. So this is from experience, but again, this is also from looking at clients, hundreds of clients that we've served, our team has served over the years that have rentals, and okay, some of the common mistakes made or some of the common advantages. You need to have some know-how, just some awareness, some ability to fix minor problems, or some know-how even with contracts and other, requirements, just some awareness of, I joked and said, well, AI can do all that for you. Well, AI lies, hallucinates, and it might tell you something is needed that might be a requirement in one county or jurisdiction, but not in yours. You need to have some know-how to be able to sift through the noise and get to the signal. But then, you have to have some time. I told a lot of people, a good rental, if you think you have time, is one on your route. Like on your way between your house and your work, one right there in the vicinity, maybe to consider. So those are 2 of the 4 laws of rental real estate. We've got that and more coming up here on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show. What you're watching right now is our weekly 1-hour talk show that airs right here on this channel, 10 a.m. Eastern time every Saturday morning, and also on podcast at the same time. Also on a couple local radio stations at the same time as well, which is why the content structured the way that it is long form on YouTube. And yep, there's a lot of podcast type things that are also recorded. But ours, we have segments as well. We try to mix in some bonus content and keep you entertained. But yeah, make sure you go to YouTube and make sure you hit that subscribe button here on YouTube and also turn on notifications so you're made aware every time we drop new content. Lots of videos, lots of content right here on this channel. Leave comments and questions below as well. We appreciate it.
Okay, go.
No, go ahead.
Well, no. So I would want to make the disclaimer that I am the accidental landlord. Like the stuff that we own, that I own personally, that Lori and I own, that the 3 of us own together. Those are all situations where we kind of needed to own it.
I don't know if that's more about us, and I want the conversation to be about
right. But that actually ties in because you're going to get into cash, and really because the question is, I just talked with this client, and this client said, "Hey, I've got six rentals, 14 doors," and I said, "Hey, you guys still have time to fund an IRA for last year. So you can each put $7,000 in your IRA." And he doesn't have any investments. Early 30s, doesn't have any investments. And he said, "Well, will that investment do better than my rental real estate?" And I said, "Well, this is an investment that you won't spend any time on."
Yeah, right.
And this investment in the Roth IRA, you open a Roth IRA, put this investment, is going to grow tax-free forever. Your house isn't going to do that.
Right. Yeah. Hey, so on YouTube, you can't see how tall we are. You can't tell if my breath smells. You also can't tell that it's 59 degrees in this room right now. You might be able to see the our breath here in a minute, but that's thanks to Kevin Korhorn.
Well, the really famous people make sure it's really cold in the room when they're speaking, so that they don't sweat. And we all have quarter zips on.
I know, but you brought that up before we recorded. We strategically are wearing quarter zips
that's right.
because we know you're going to keep it very cold in here. When you show up with a quarter zip, I need now a sweater.
You need to be in a tank top from here on out.
Kevin has recorded. He has recorded this before video with his shirt off.
That's true.
Yeah,
that is true.
And it wasn't even in the studio. It was in a.
We're trying to get some energy going. It was the flattest, deadest show ever. And I said, well, it can't get any worse.
Oh, that's funny.
And then it went viral.
And then here we are.
And then I proved myself wrong.
Yes. All right. Here we go. Second segment. All right. Let's have some fun. Have you ever had any experience owning rental real estate? If so, what'd you learn? What would you do differently? Would you say it was a success? What would you tell others? That's what we're helping you with right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Stay up to date on all Wise Money content. Find us online, wisemoneyshow.com. And then all over social media, wherever you're at, we are there as well. Search the Wise Money Show. I think, the curiosity around rental real estate is absolutely valid. And Kevin, you already mentioned, right? Right before our complaining session, which, by the way, we'll pick up here in just a few seconds. It's one of. Did you say it's the best investment?
It's one of the better investments out there, as long as you assign no value to your time.
So there's kind of laws, and this isn't like there's kind of theory, a hypothesis. No, we've seen similarities of those that have run rental real estate portfolios and done it very well, and then similarities of those who have tried and, oh gosh, that was hard or it didn't work out. Well, what were they missing? And so 4 laws of rental real estate. If you're curious about this, yeah, you need to have some know-how. If you've got to pay someone every time a light fixture needs changed, or you need to change the ceiling fan or whatever, it's going to just drain your profit, okay? You need time. And even if that time is just checking up on things, or, vacations and worrying and organizing, well, who's going to help from your golden Rolodex, all that sort of stuff, you need time. You need cash as well. And this, early on in my career, had a couple that reached out. They were friends in our network, and they reached out and said, we need some help. And turns out, and this is like a valid idea. There's no shame in this, but they had gotten into a rental. They bought low and fixed it up, and it appreciated it, and then they flipped it, rented it along the way, then they flipped it, and it worked out. So then they got into another one. Well, it turns out they were buying, I wouldn't say distressed properties, but they needed a little fixer-upper, right? They were funding all that on credit cards. And what was happening was it was then like sort of creating this big snowball. And the house that they currently had, they were renting, but in order for this to keep working, they needed to sell this thing because the rent wasn't enough to pay the mortgage and the ballooning credit card debt. So they needed to sell this thing, but they weren't selling it because what time was it? This happened to be late 07, early 08.
And that's not a unique story, is it?
No.
I could share similar stories. And that is, anytime you own a home of any kind, this could be your primary residence. Maybe you're listening today and you're like, I have no desire to be in a rental property. Many of these same requirements or laws, prerequisites, if you will, can apply ultimately to just owning your own home. It's going to take time. You're going to have more to upkeep. You're going to have some know-how that you need to be accumulating. Or if you don't have the know-how, do you have that golden Rolodex to be able to call the right people? But yes, there has to be cash. And that could be in the form of emergency fund. It could just be liquidity, because things are going to break. Things are going to go wrong. You're going to have stretches of time where the rent is not rolling in. Maybe you're between renters and it's just taking a while to get someone back in the property. All of that drains your cash. And if you're living too close to the edge anyway, as a landlord, then you may not have the staying power ultimately to be able to see this thing through to become a great investment.
I mean, you said too close to the edge. That's exactly what I told him. I said, you guys own rental properties. That's akin to, you're in a knife fight and pretending that you're not going to get cut. No, you just expect you're going to get cut. Like, you're going to need to replace the roof. You're going to have that, Kevin, and I know this is getting closer to that 4th law, but the $10,000 cat. Right. You want to explain that, right? That's another reason why you just need cash on hand. And if you think, well, I have an emergency fund, so that means I'm good to buy the rental. No. You probably need an emergency fund for the rentals.
Right.
Yeah. So the question that a listener of the show asked me was, hey, I live in a house. I'm thinking that I would move out of my house, buy a different house, and rent my current house. And because I want passive income. And I internally, I smile a little bit because that is like saying military intelligence, or there's a lot of other funny sayings.
Oxymoron.
Yeah. So anyways, I said, hey, tell me how you're doing for cash. Do you have the money to handle the $10,000 cat? And she's like, what is a $10,000 cat? And I say, well, when you talk to people about renting your house and you say, hey, listen, no smoking and no pets. And they're like, okay, that's cool. And then they haven't paid for their rent for the last 3 months. And so you go over and they're in the kitchen smoking. And when they open the door, the cat runs out past you. And then it takes about 3 to 6 months then to get someone out. So they haven't paid for 3 months. It takes 3 months to get them out. Now it's your 6 months. And then you go in and you kind of observe how they treated your house and this beloved place that you took such great care of. And you realize that their cat marked every carpet and everything.
If you've ever owned a cat, you know what marked means.
Yeah.
Yep.
So basically ruined all the carpets. Yeah. So now all the carpets have to come out because you're not getting that smell out.
A friend of ours, they just moved, and they when they got the keys, they went over to the house all excited, and the prior owners had the furniture positioned so perfectly to hide this awful. They said we cannot move into this, and so turns out carpet is now $15,000. That's what they spent. But that gets to so yes, expect you're in a knife fight. You're going to get cut. Do you have the cash to get bandaged up? Now, before we go on, but I want to weave that story, that real life story and circumstance, into the final law, the fourth law. And this is the surprise one. This is the one that you didn't expect, even if you listened to the first three and said, okay, thanks, Captain Obvious. This is the one you didn't expect. You need to love confrontation. And the reason why I would say love confrontation as a law is you might say, I'm okay with confrontation. I can handle confrontation. No, you actually have to bring the confrontation. And so therefore it needs to be more than okay. Like what I found in life, this grand human experiment is people that are okay with confrontation are okay getting feedback from someone else. But you're going to have to bring that feedback, bring that confrontation.
Or consequences for someone.
Correct.
Right?
Like someone's going to tell you, yeah, but the reason I haven't paid rent is, we've got the young kids and we're not going to be able to buy them Christmas presents this year. And yeah, I'm not saying you can't show compassion. But at the same time, like you've got to hold a hard line in certain instances. And that's going to, you're going to have to call people out. You're going to need to embrace confrontation if you're going to own rentals.
Right. And most people are not great with that. But you're talking about confrontation with the tenant.
Yeah.
I'm talking about confrontation with the professionals, the tradesmen that I've hired to fix my stuff, because I don't get to confront them in the evenings. Mike, you said have the rental on your route to work, and you can stop by after work or whatever, and it's after work. No, the tradesmen need to be talked to at 10:30. Yeah, hey, you said you were going to be here and be fixing this, and I wanted it to be this, and you did that, and how do I do it? And if you have a job where you're supposed to be, 9 to 5, because people say, hey, you go work your 9 to 5 and then real estate can be your 5 to 9. And it's great. It's just the best thing ever. I'm like, well, it can be, but it's confrontation almost in every direction. And I was making my list of the reasons why people drop out of the game. And for sure, confrontation is one of those.
Yeah, you don't want to be the bad guy all the time.
There's a last straw of saying, okay, I'm not having another one of those conversations. I am out.
Yeah.
So 4 laws again, and I just want to repeat myself that we're not talking anyone out of it. This is a fantastic investment. It's just not for everyone. And the things that weed people in or out are clear. And so yeah, you need to know how to swing a hammer. Yeah. And it doesn't mean you need to fix everything. You just need to have the awareness and the ability, because when you're getting it started, you probably will be fixing most things. And then maybe if you build this up and have some success and you start delegating some of that work, you'll need to know, listen, I know you just gave me 3 proposals for that fence. We're going to go with this first one, not the third, because I'm aware we don't need all those other things, blah, blah, blah. And so know how you need to have cash. Something's going to go wrong. You need some margin, and it's not going to be occupied the entire time. You need time, and then you need to love confrontation.
And I would throw in complexity, because if you don't understand, now that I have a rental house, I've got to do a Schedule E on my tax return. I need to understand depreciation. I need to understand entities and entity structure and how to transfer risk from me personally to the entity. And so there's a lot more to it.
Yeah. And so, okay, so 4 laws plus 1. Now, what's the next step? If you think this is for you, what's the next step? What would you do? We've got that and more questions coming up here on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. I was going to go there next, Kevin. That's fantastic. And so, yeah.
Because that's what ties us back into Terry's question.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
What are the things you're not considering?
Yep.
But, okay, so you did awesome talking about, hey, what lessons have you learned? And I thought you were going to say drop a comment, and you didn't. So I'm saying, dude, let's invite comments. We should have more comments ever.
You're not talking to me. You're talking to the.
Okay, listen, Mike. We should have more comments ever on this show than any other show in the history of shows. Everyone's got a story. Everyone's got a story.
Yeah. I think, and I don't know, in the portfolio, we've got 2,000 videos now. A few have gotten a lot of views. I think there's more comments on the lottery show than any others, which is I'm proud of as a financial planner.
Would you say that's just luck?
Oh,
that's hilarious.
Oh, gosh.
Not funny.
All right, here we go. So, what's the next step? And what to look out for. We'll put a wrap on that, and we'll get into then trends and the housing market, and then that should lead us into.
Wait, what's the next step? Is that what you said?
Yeah. What's it like? So,
because I thought this was. Yeah. What are the risks that she needs to be looking out for?
I was thinking Terry was a man. Oh. But that's okay. It's all right.
Funny.
Yep, we don't know.
I have some male Terrys in my life too.
I was thinking that, so if there's more risk beyond the 4 laws plus 1, then, because I was thinking it was all wrapped up in that. But if there's more.
We haven't even started answering the question yet.
Oh, my. But those are all risks. Do you have know-how? Do you have cash? Like, if you don't, blah,
I
blah,
got
blah.
you.
But then we'll weave around to, okay, say you check all those boxes. Then, what do you do?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, because the other thing is it a long-term or short-term rental? Because the tax treatment is different.
Yeah.
Are you a real estate professional or not? I mean, there's so much to it.
We're probably going to find a way to pivot in this segment at some point into just general overview of the housing market. Those that are homeowners, but not wanting to be landlords. All right, here we go. Been talking about the 4 laws of rental real estate, but what else is going on in the housing market? It's housing season right now. Are you in a house that you think, we'd love to transition and get out of? And we look at Zillow every single night. And if so, what are the trends going on in the housing market, and how does that impact and connect with all 6 areas of your financial life? We're helping with that right now. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Bernard. With me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show is on podcast. Wherever you listen to podcasts, just search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to it there, and rate the program there as well. We appreciate it. All right, kicking off the show with a question from Terry, and we've taken the long road as expected. And so Terry's saying, our family, we've outgrown our current home. We're looking for a new house, but instead of selling, we'd like to rent out our existing home. What are some of the risks to look out for? We talked about the 4 laws of rental real estate. Josh, there's more risks, or what else would you point out before we say, well, if you've addressed all those risks, then here's your first step. Here's what you do next.
Well, so I'm just thinking through the scenario that many people may be facing right now, and this may be part of the appeal to even considering keeping your old house, your primary residence, as a rental property after you move out. Could be because you really like the mortgage that you hold, and you're tempted to keep that ridiculously low interest rate and just go get a new mortgage. And pausing and recognizing that, okay, we are adding leverage to our life. We are adding more debt. We're adding more monthly obligations that have to continue whether you have a renter in the old property or not. But there's something else that you have to just keep on your radar if you're literally going to rent out a house that was your primary residence. There are special tax rules that exist for a primary residence where if you have held it for as your home for at least 2 out of the past 5 years.
Yeah, your primary residence.
You get to sell that and pay no tax on the gain up to certain limits. If you're single, $250,000, it's $500,000 worth of gain if you're a married couple. Well, if you take a primary residence that you lived in for more than 2 or 5 years, 2 of 5 years, and now you're turning it into a rental property and selling it down the road, you may have given up the opportunity to eliminate some of that gain. Mm-hmm. And if you've held this house for a long time, I mean, maybe you bought this, back after the last housing crisis, and this thing has doubled in value or more. There could be significant gains that are built up that you would want to eliminate. And so just keep in mind that you may want to consider not literally keeping that property as your rental, maybe selling it, buying something else similar, just because you're able to reset some of your cost basis there.
Yeah, that's a good
And
one.
if it's been your primary residence, I'm going to say you've done everything you wanted to do to this property and you've made it really nice. And so if that's the case, that's not, again, none of these are insurmountable, but you just need to know you have to be super, super, super careful about who you let rent the house from you.
Yeah, so that's sort of where I was going to go with next steps. If you've looked at those risks and said, yeah, I think I'm going to give this a go, then entity structure and rental agreement is probably next. And I think both of those you're going to want a professional for at least some guidance. I mean, in the age of technology that we're in right now, you can find free templates. You don't even need to go to AI, but you're going to want a professional to take a look and say, well, here's how it all fits in. So many people just own the rental and don't put it in an entity. You're exposing yourself to risk there. Many people put it in a rental and and rent it out and don't even talk to their insurance agent, which, by the way, that if you want to have a claim denied, go ahead and do that. That's sarcasm. Shouldn't do that on radio. But as soon as you start renting that home out, it needs to have different coverage, right? So you're going to need that professional in place as well. And then that same attorney that might help you, or the financial professional advisor that is helping give you guidance on what entity and whether you should put it in an entity, should also be able to give you some guidance on here's where you'd find the right lease agreement and rental agreement and so on.
I get ready for a little surprise, because the property taxes you pay, especially if you're in Michigan, the property taxes you pay on that house are very different if you have a homestead exemption versus if you don't live in that house. Because I don't want to exaggerate, but I'm going to say it feels like it's almost double.
It's double. Yeah.
I believe it.
And not only that, but if you live in a city like Niles, you now get to pay $75 a year, and then they're going to come and inspect your house every year. Buchanan just started doing that. So now you say, okay, now I've got various entities that are in,
Is that inspection to reassess, like to keep raising the taxes, or
no? That's
city ordinances.
Yeah, to make sure it's within code.
I gotcha.
So there's basically a code inspection, but the tax bill that you were used to paying, because Josh, you were saying the first thing that came to my mind: why do I want to keep my house? Because I've got and I hear folks saying this, I got a mortgage at 2.75%.
Right.
Well, here's the thing, that the price of the house factors that in. So you're getting so this is where you think, well, if I got rid of my this house and bought a different house and my mortgage was 6%, it's a huge difference. Well, the price of the new house you're buying factors that in as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Last risk, I guess I would throw out there, and this is maybe self-evident, but being able to have a great system, a legal system for screening tenants. Again, I'm just thinking back over the years to clients who have been the most successful in rental properties. They always say, yeah, I just had amazing tenants. I had someone who helped take care of the property. They treated it like it was their own. They were so responsible. They were never late. They were just amazing people that you'd want to invite to Thanksgiving dinner, you know? And it's hard to identify how someone's going to behave once they get into your house. And there are, all kinds of laws to protect tenants from discrimination and things like that. So how do you have a system for identifying people that you can trust? It's a trusting relationship that you're entering into.
Yeah, that's a good point. So if you think about the areas of your financial life that are impacted by owning a rental. So there's 6 areas to your financial life, everyone's financial life. The first area is your present financial position. That is cash and cash flow. That is assets and liabilities. Yes, owning a rental, it's parked right there. You need to look at your balance sheet, your cash flow to say, am I stable? Are things in a good condition to start adding this complexity like Kevin mentioned and the potential risk because it is leverage and so on. And so, yeah, very much need to consider your present financial position. Protection planning is your second area. That is, how do you manage the financial risks that are on your shoulders? And yeah, we already mentioned specifically homeowners insurance. It's going to shift. It's going to change. You need rental insurance. You need coverage there. Maybe this means you need an umbrella policy. Maybe there are other adjustments you need to make to think about life insurance as well. If you pass away, oftentimes if you're married, there's one person that's into the rentals, the other one tolerates the rentals. And if the one that's into the rentals passes away, is there life insurance there so that the individual, the survivor, can be unencumbered and have time and flexibility to get rid of these rentals? So protection planning, tax planning we've talked about as well. Owning rental real estate, you mentioned, Kevin, it's complicated. You need to own or know about depreciation. Depreciation is your friend. It is your friend and can be, right?
Until the end.
Until the end. So I know a lot of people like that. And but you want to be aware of the tax complexity or changes or opportunities available to you with rental real estate.
Right, because you have to depreciate your house and take depreciation on your tax return. Because if you don't, you're still going to have that depreciation that you should have taken recaptured.
Isn't that wild? Kevin said have to, and that's not just common language. Nope, you have to. And if you don't, doesn't matter. You still have to recapture it out there in the future. It's not just, this is complicated, I'm just not going to do it. You have to, or you miss out because you're going to have to. Anyway, so investment planning, yeah, this connects there as well. But certainly retirement planning, the fifth area. Are you going to own the rental? Will it be passive income in retirement? Or is the income just going to pay the mortgage and actually doesn't create income in retirement? I've had a lot of people who say that, and I say, well, don't forget about the rental income we're going to have. Well, aren't you going to have a mortgage? Yeah. So wait, there won't be any net retirement income to you until this thing changes. And then finally, estate plan. If something happens to you, what happens to this property? Having the right ownership and entity structure. Owning rentals, not just those 4 laws and the other risks we talked about. It touches all 6 areas of your financial life. Got to work with your CFP on that. All right, we got more here coming up on the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. Okay.
So what's next?
Trends, and then I don't know. And I've got a bunch of good questions here, so we might not even get to the next listener question. It's infused here, Ron. I've always wanted to live in Texas, not because I want to live in Texas, but it just seems.
You just want to say you're from Texas?
It just seems so nice. Like everything's spread out. It just feels like if I owned a house in Texas, there's lots of land and it's flat and you've got cattle and it's like everything is.
It's like 110 degrees in the summer.
I was going to say, there's no clouds. So as a Midwesterner for life, man, Texas just seems great.
Yeah.
It sounds cool.
And there's all these videos. I don't know. Maybe they just follow me because the algorithm, but they're lies. But, look at this, what would be a $5 million house anywhere else, even in the Midwest. It's, 200,000 here in Texas because there's so much land. We can just build as many houses as we want. All right. So we'll hit trends. It's 4 segment. So we're landing on plane. If we get into this question, we can. Otherwise, we'll maybe pick it up next show. All righty, here we go. Thanks for being here. This is the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group. My name is Mike Bernard. Here with me in the KFG studios, Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory. Every episode of the Wise Money Show, as well as a lot of other content, is on the Wise Money YouTube channel. Go check that out. Go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show, subscribe to the show there so that you're made aware every time we drop new content. And you can leave questions and comments. We spent the entire show talking about the 4 laws of rental real estate, and a lot of people have dabbled in it. So I would love to hear from you. We would love to hear from you. Have you tried it? Are you curious? What have you learned? What would you advise someone else to do? Fill it up with comments. Go to YouTube, search the Wise Money Show, and leave comments and questions there. So guys, we've been talking about rental real estate, and that is one of the surprising trends. I'm calling it a surprising trend because it does feel like we are in a renter's market. rents are going up and more people are looking at, you mean I could rent my house for that much? Oh gosh, I want to do that. What are some other trends that you're seeing in the overall kind of housing market?
Boy, maybe this is demographics, but because of the run up in value, because or just general rise in prices, because interest rates are higher than they were even just a handful of years ago. One of the trends is that it's just harder for young people to get into their own property.
Yeah.
You know, it's a delay to owning your first home, and you know, it's our kids' generation essentially. Like, will they own their first home a little bit later in life? And nothing wrong with that, but it's not going to happen by accident. You know, I feel like this is a trend that's going to require individual effort and great choices early on in someone's career in order to fight against this trend, like to be able to get into home ownership if that's appropriate for their lifestyle. But the reason why owning a home has traditionally just been a stabilizer in many people's financial lives is because it's a way to build up equity while you're living life. You know, if you're a renter for your entire career or long chunks of it, again, nothing wrong with that. You can still make that work, but someone else is building up the equity in whatever house or apartment you're living in instead of you.
What would your rich dad tell you? Yes, you can build equity, but it is a liability. Yeah. A house is a liability. And when you look at the expenses, I was wondering that same question myself when I got our property tax bill in the mail just recently. And I thought, how, so in essence, it's just lot rent. I am renting from the emperor, and if I don't want to pay my lot rent, guess what? I won't. I won't live there anymore.
Yeah, you're not really an owner.
So this is when I look at the monthly payment just to pay the property tax, I think this becomes out of reach.
Yeah. So
a lot of people. Yeah.
I think a trend is yes for new people wanting to get into a house, and I think the other overall trend. I mean, you mentioned it, Josh and Kevin. You're alluding to it is just overall financial stability and responsibility. And yeah, like, and it's not going to happen by accident. You can't take your eye off the ball. And so I would absolutely say that's a trend. Connected to that is figuring out the down payment, because even if you do own a house right now, that things for most of the country are still so competitive that the best practice of selling and then buying is almost out the window. No pun intended there. Where you've got to, well, we're only moving because we need these certain features. They're needs, not wants. And those needs, they go quick. So we've got to buy and then we sell. So where's the down payment come from? And just recognizing that increased risk, that's certainly a trend.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to the 4 laws of rental real estate. And if you said it's know-how, time, cash, and confrontation, you have to be good at those as a homeowner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's different, and the context is different, but you still have to be good at all 4 of those.
So last night, some friends, again, I told you they just bought a new house, and they had the carpet surprise, but then they also, I woke up this morning and my wife Cindy, she said, "Oh, I got some text last night, and they changed the color of all of the can lights. Apparently, the color was yellow." And I was like, they were asking my wife, well, should we paint them? Should we replace them? And so they replaced all those while the wife was doing that while the husband was replacing all the ceiling fans. And think about that. Yeah, that's not fun. We were sleeping. That's what they were doing. And I know which one I would choose. But there's a third option of, well, you pay someone to fix all that stuff. And all the ticky-tack stuff, like that just eats away at cash. And so you got to have some know-how.
And that's what Kevin was alluding to when he referred to the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And if you've never read that book, I highly recommend it. It will mess with your thinking a little bit, help you form your own philosophy on things like real estate. But that definition of what is a liability is something that you think you own, but it's generating expenses for you instead of income. And when you stop and think about your own personal residence through that grid, that definition. An asset's something that generates income. A liability is something that generates expenses. You have to conclude, well, boy, my house certainly looks and smells and feels a whole lot more like a liability. Those joys of homeownership are real, like those costs and the real estate taxes, the homeowner's insurance, the mortgage interest, all of that is draining cash from you, not putting it in your hands. And the reality, though, is if you were renting a property, you're paying all those things. Yeah. It's baked into your rent because the landlord has to charge you enough in order for them to cover all of those things.
And then a little bit more.
Well, they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Not all landlords actually do that.
Well, yeah.
I mean, this
find
is
one of those, I guess.
Right. But I mean, you're right. You say, hey, do I rent or do I own? Mm-hmm. And this is a great question.
And I'll tell you, in my own financial life early on, the best years ever were the 3 years that we rented before ever buying a house. It was glorious. And maybe that's just newlywed bliss. I don't know. But I'll tell you, life was simple, and it allowed us, by renting and living very inexpensively, by eliminating or avoiding all of those unexpected things that come up with being a homeowner, it allowed us to get into a financial position where homeownership could be a joy instead of just a pure risk.
And I can argue against renting. I can tell you what it's like to sit in an office building without air conditioning, and everyone in the office is sweating. And you think, well, we're paying rent. Certainly this is covered. Certainly if I owned this building, no one in this building would be sweating.
One of the trends has been a few years ago, before COVID, interest rates, 30-year rates were 2.75, 3%. And yeah, they spiked. They're coming down. There's a clear trend that they have not fallen as quickly as anyone hoped or expected, but they are grinding lower. Now that they're below 6% at the time we're recording, do you think that mortgage lock inventory, so basically with those low mortgage rates, people haven't put their house up on the market, so therefore low inventory, and therefore that's kept prices high. You think that finally gets neutralized this year? Since we're under 6% in mortgage rate?
I think there's been a thawing from the 23, 24 highs when you're paying north of 7 for a mortgage. There's a lot of uncertainty, as we know. So, at the time of recording, you could probably get something slightly less than 6. But I don't
think we're there yet, personally. So maybe if you bought a house and you're above 7, now you might want to refinance, right? If you can save a percent or more, I know a lot of people have been waiting. This might be the time where you refinance. Maybe you wait a little bit to see if the Fed drops rates and what happens here. But that could be a trend. I don't think we see a ton of houses flood the market. We are seeing it in some areas, though, but here in Indiana, the Midwest, still pretty tight.
I don't know if you guys have observed this, but in the spring, a lot of times we're helping to update people's net worth statements or their personal balance sheets. And one of the major assets on a lot of people's financial statements is their house. And so we're checking, what's the value of this house right now? And I've actually seen a lot of people where the house is worth less this year than a prior year.
Interesting.
If you spend any kind of time on Zillow, it feels like home prices are maybe easing or at least flattening.
Yeah.
And some of that could be, finally sort of shaking out all the effects from the COVID years and just the buying spree that was happening at that time.
So if you are looking to move, be realistic about what you could sell your house for, what you'll net after all the expenses and so on. Be realistic about what the payment is. And if it's going to be a higher payment, start living on that payment today, meaning start saving that money and so on. All right, that's all the time we have for today. On behalf of Josh Gregory, Kevin Korhorn, all of us at KFG, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for the Wise Money Show with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.